Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and a very warm welcome to Monday's edition of the DC Universe Daily. It's the beginning of another week. It's that Monday feeling. Some of us love Mondays, some of us hate them. I love every day. I'm just happy to be alive. But today we're going to talk about a very controversial topic in terms of DC. And it's the Snyderverse fandom. Now, the Snyderverse fandom are a very effective fandom. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have ever had the Snyder Cut. Now, I'm a Snyder fan, I'm a Snyder appreciator, but I'm not part of them. They're on another level. They're ferocious, they're relentless, and they're ruthless, and they're never gonna stop. For the past 4 days, fire James Gunn and bring back Henry Cavill as Superman has been trending on Twitter. They also have some other ideas as well. They're looking to invest in Warner Brothers and, if they can, possibly buy Warner Brothers shares. I'm sure the Snyderverse fandom has some very wealthy fans amongst them. So some of you will be treating all of this as a joke. Clearly, as I said yesterday, David Zaslav at this moment in time won't be firing James Gunn because David Zaslav is happy with James Gunn's plan, and who wouldn't be? James Gunn has promised a universe that covers one story in cinemas, on television, on streaming on HBO Max, and in gaming for DC Universe. If that works, that brings home the bacon and it quiets the sting of the Snyderverse fandom. But what if it's not successful? Then there could be a little victory here for the Snyderverse fans. So I don't actually think the Snyderverse fans are wasting their time. Now, my stance hasn't changed. I'm going to wait to see what James Gunn gives us, and when I taste it, I'll be honest about what I think about that taste. But James Gunn is under a huge amount of pressure. Now, he knew the Snyderverse fans would not be happy, but I think maybe him and Zaslav and Safran have underestimated how effective and intelligent this movement is. And I can attest to this. They are a very clever movement. Just imagine, last week they found out Cavill was being replaced as Superman. Basically saying to them, you have never got a chance of restoring the Snyderverse. Did this quell their fire? No, actually, it reignited their fire. They've been very, very quiet for quite a few months because they know what I know. As long as Zack Snyder doesn't tell them to stop, they're not going to stop. Because again, you and I both know Zack Snyder, if given the green light, would run over to DC and WB to finish his Snyderverse Justice League arc. He still wants this. And people can say, he's busy doing Rebel Moon, he's busy doing this. He loves DC, he's passionate. He wants his fans to keep on fighting for him. Now, he may shock us and tell his fans to stop, and maybe even WB are trying to get him to tell his fans to stop. And once that happens, it's over. But for the time being, as long as Zack doesn't say anything, and Zack is a man who says what he thinks. If he wanted this to stop, if he wanted this to end, then he would tell people to stop. Now, the next kind of, I suppose, problem for James Gunn is, depending on the casting that we're going to talk about, is the casting of his Superman. If it's a great casting, then the Snyderverse fandom isn't going to have much room to move in. They can say it's a crap casting, but if, like, everyone says it's great, then it's great. But if James Gunn was to cast a black Clark Kent or a Latino Clark Kent, or someone the fandom, not just the Snyderverse fandom, but everyone felt wasn't a good fit for Superman, then Gunn would have a problem and it would be advantage Snyderverse fans. No, this is not a futile fight that the Snyderverse fans are doing. I have never seen them as motivated as I have since the announcement of Henry Cavill's exit and firing. And it is a firing. It is a sacking. He's being replaced. He's no longer wanted as Superman. And there's a lot of situations around that, the way he was treated by Zaslav and The Rock. Only a month or so ago, we were told he was back as Superman. Now, he's not back as Superman. Now, we know that's not James Gunn's fault, but we also know this, that basically WB Pictures, co-chairs, Adby and DeLuca, wanted to carry on with Cavill and Snyder's cast. There was a plan for a Man of Steel 2 from the Peaky Blinders creator to bring in Brainiac for a Man of Steel sequel. And I think there's not one Superman or DC fan that wouldn't have been excited about that or, would have opposed that. Now, the Snyderverse fans weren't very happy about the John Williams music over the Black Adam post-credits scene, but ultimately, they got their man back and they were happy. But so the Snyderverse stands are always going to speak out about things they don't like. And I spoke about the John Williams thing from the very beginning. They wanted to turn Cavill's Superman in a more accurate depiction of comic book Superman. And I get that. And the Snyderverse stands want, to keep faith with what Snyder was going to do. Because ultimately, at the end of the story, Snyder makes Superman into a faithful adaptation of the comic book Superman by the end of his arc and story. Snyder feels that Superman or any character should earn the right to become what they are or were in the comics. Again, that's not a bad take. But this is, as I say, that the Snyderverse fans are not wasting their time here. So if the casting of Superman isn't one that we all say, wow, that's awesome casting, he's got a problem. Gunn is no mug. Gunn is clever. He knows what to do. But he's never come up people like this before. This fandom are gangster-like. This fandom are mafia-like. Sometimes I don't like some of their takes. Sometimes I love their takes. But they're all over my timeline. They are big. They are influential. And they can cause problems for James Gunn, Peter Safran, and David Zaslav. And they're not going anywhere. And as I said earlier, they have been pretty quiet since the Superman post-credit scene on Black Adam. But even then, they weren't ferocious. They weren't coming in numbers. But ever since James Gunn announced he was replacing Henry Cavill as Superman, they're back. I haven't seen them in these numbers since they were fighting to release the Snyder Cut. Now they are really, really motivated. And they are digging. What are they digging for? They're digging for dirt against James Gunn. And I hope that James Gunn has no kind of skeletons in his closet, because if the Snyderverse stands find anything, they will use it. As I say, they are ruthless people. And as I keep on saying, even though I'm happy to see what Gunn does, and even though I believe that it was time for a change and to kind of reboot the entire universe, which I don't believe is going to happen anyway. Yes, he's going to recast the entirety of the Justice League, it looks like. But Peter Safran's Shazam will remain as in the same actor will continue to play that character. That's what I believe, and I don't think we're going to change the actor for Shazam. Zachary Levi. I was blustering on there because I forgot Zachary Levi's name. And Asher Angel. I think Asher Angel and Zachary Levi remain as both versions of Shazam and Billy Batson, because that world is produced by Peter Safran. So that's not going to change. And I don't believe that, James Gunn's Suicide Squad universe and Peacemaker universe go anywhere. I believe Margot Robbie will remain as Harley Quinn. Now, this is going to be another chink in Gunn's and Safran's armor, something that the Snyderverse fandom can go with them, can go at them with. Because, people are going to say, all right, you're rebooting, the entirety of the Justice League, but at the end of the day, you're still going to keep Zachary Levi and Asher Angel. Well, that's a bit toxic, isn't it? Why do they work and Henry Cavill doesn't work? Now, again, I suppose this is going to be about box office again. They will be looking at this next year and seeing what works in the box office and what doesn't. So I would assume, because Zaslav will have a say here as well in this. So if Shazam Fury of the Gods is a flop, I would imagine Gunn and Safran will be under huge pressure to replace Levi and Angel in the lead roles and just recast that whole universe. Maybe they'd even give Shazam a rest for a little bit in the new DC universe. And obviously the Suicide Squad universe is mainly probably planned to be depicted on HBO Max, and Peacemaker did very well. It's just very, very, I think, it gives me a lot of red flags to see that maybe they get to keep what they're doing, but they delete everything else. Because the whole thing doesn't work. Gunn's Suicide Squad did flop at the global box office. Let's not forget that. And other films have done day and date and been quite successful. So he hasn't even got that excuse really. But he could be keeping his stuff and getting rid of Zack Snyder's cast. So again, the Snyderverse fans have something else to build upon there, because that's going to be a problem for him as well. Because most people are saying, even the people who are butt-kissing James Gunn are saying, if you're going to delete Henry Cavill, you've got to delete everyone. You either reboot the whole thing or you reboot nothing. It's pretty clear that the DCEU doesn't work within the global box office and things need to change. And Gunn and Safran are right to change those things. But this is a very interesting situation within WB. Because as I said, we know that Mike DeLuca and Pam Abby wanted to continue with Henry Cavill as Superman and keep the natural order of things, but change things within the DCEU a little bit to make things more successful and relatable to a general audience. And I did hear rumours that Mike DeLuca was being tapped to be the DC Studios lone co-chair. In fact, him and Pam Abby were not only going to run WB Pictures, but apparently run the arm of DC Studios as well, with Mike DeLuca taking centre lead, centre stage. As I've told you many times, he did produce the Blade movie. Maybe he produced Blade 2 as well. So Mike DeLuca knows his stuff. So with this situation changing, and what changed here? What changed Zaslav's mind from going from Mike DeLuca running DC Studios to James Gunn and Peter Safran? It's clear that James Gunn and Peter Safran really wanted this gig and this job and went at David Zaslav and sold him this thing. Basically, the only thing that he's going to be sold on is money. And they sold him on this good idea, obvious idea. If we have one story within gaming, TV, streaming and movies, you can make a lot of money. And in theory, this is a good idea and you can make money from it, but ultimately, you've got to do it in the right way. It's not as easy as saying you're going to do it. You've got to do it. Can James Gunn and Peter Safran pull this off? Because if they don't, it's certainly career suicide for James Gunn. Peter Safran's just a producer. Nobody gives a shit about Peter Safran. He's got his company, his production company. He will carry on doing anything. There's no risk here to Peter Safran, but to James Gunn, he's there on social media. He is the face of this. And if this fails, this could be an unrepairable situation for James Gunn's career. And he knows that. And he's got this fandom, the Snyderverse fandom, digging away at him, gnawing away at him. And they are not going anywhere. When I see them on Twitter, I tell them, go for it. As long as you're constructive and you're not toxic, go for it. There's no reason why they shouldn't continue to fight, because there's lots of scenarios that can change. I've explained to you there is a divide in the studio itself in terms of Gunn and Adby and DeLuca. I don't think Adby and DeLuca can be happy because they were going to do their thing, right? They were going to bring back Cavill for a Man of Steel 2 and bring back Brainiac. And is there anyone, any fan who thinks that the genius who created Peaky Blinders couldn't have written a great movie? It would have been interesting who would have directed this movie as well, but they were going to work very, very, very closely with Henry Cavill to make this a great movie. And maybe Henry Cavill deserved one more movie. Would it have been that difficult? Now, in terms of restoring the Snyderverse, the thing is, I've already said that I believe we need a change, and we need a reboot, and we need a restart. But is there any issue? If you've got a brand new DC universe, why can't Snyder have a little Elseworld like Reeves has got and Todd Phillips has got? Have a little DCEU Elseworld where he finishes his story. Maybe, if it's really successful, he can continue separately with Cavill, Affleck, and the rest of them. Why not? People say, oh, it's confusing. Well, you know, you were all celebrating having Michael Keaton and the 80-year-old geezer as Batman and having different versions of these characters and making anything we've ever seen in live action before in DC canon. You didn't think that was confusing, but when Zack Snyder comes in to do something, it's confusing. What we could have got here, if these were kind of reliable people and actually logical people, we could have had Snyder releasing movies for movie theatres in a separate universe and Gunn and Safran doing their own thing in a central universe. And what's wrong with that? And let me say something to you. This is never going away. Snyder is not going away. His fans are never going away. This won't stop until Snyder and his fans and his actors are too old to reprise their roles and restore the Snyderverse. So this is going to go on for years and years. And this puts added pressure on the studio, where what they could have actually said was, do you know what, Zach, when you finish doing your work on Netflix, why don't you come over? Let's discuss it. We'll give you your own little universe just so you can finish off your arc. And who knows, if it does well in the box office, you can continue in your own little corner while James and Peter do their own thing in the central universe. Tell me something. Does that affect you? Does that hurt you? Because you still get your brand new universe that we all want. But Zack gets to finish his stuff because you know Zack's a good director and he could have given us something beautiful. How many of you actually don't want to see Zack complete his arc? Come on. We're invested in these characters. We could have had it all, but no. So each leadership has refused to allow Zack to finish his arc. And now they've given themselves a huge problem because the way Cavill was sacked wasn't very good. Wasn't very good at all. And I think this is the perfect solution. Let Zack have his little corner there. You do your central universe, it's fine. Yes, you're going to have two Supermen, blah, 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 but you're already going to have a Bruce Wayne in the Joker universe, a Bruce Wayne Batman in Matt Reeves' The Batman universe, and a brand new Batman in the DC universe. So does a fourth Batman matter in Zack Snyder's Elseworld? Of course it doesn't, because in the comics there's multiple versions of Batman and Superman and Jokers and so many other characters. And as long as it's scripted in the right way, nobody is going to care. The more, the fucking merrier. It's, you know, people are fine with multiple Batmen when it suits them, but when it gets to Snyder finishing his arc, everyone's really upset. I'm not against a brand new universe. I think we need a brand new universe for the general audience so WB can make the money from their DC IP that they need. And I agree with that. But basically, Zack's universe can bring in extra bacon, extra money, make the fans happy. What's wrong with that? I actually don't think this hurts anyone. But no, it's another leadership that's created another problematic situation. And, you know, the studio will say to me, look, Mick, we don't want to be held to ransom. But you are being held to ransom because we are the consumer. We're in charge. We all need each other. We need the studio. We need the creators. We need the actors. But you need us to consume your shit. And without us, you don't have anything. You know, Zack's movies made money. Maybe not the money that the studio wanted, but his movies made money. Zack's movies never made a loss, right? And the only reason Justice League made a loss is because they invested in Zack's movie, then Joss's movie, then Zack Snyder cut again. That's the only reason they could never get back that money. But ultimately, Man of Steel made a slight profit. Yeah? BVS made a slight profit. They didn't make the profits they wanted them to, and that's the difference, but they didn't lose any money. And Zack Snyder's Justice League is an incredible film. It is. It's an incredible fucking movie. I adore it. And I want to see the conclusion. I want to see everyone get what they want here. Have a brand new central universe and allow Zack to have his little corner theatrically to finish his arc. And if he is successful in the box office, why can't they continue, right? Because everyone can get what they want here. But that's not what we're going to get here. What we're actually going to get is Zack, again, not being able to finish what he started. Why is this important? Why does this matter? Why do I think morally the Snyderverse fans are in the right here? Zack Snyder, everyone knows how badly Zack Snyder was treated, whether you like what he did or not. You can't deny he's a talented director. You can't deny he's a nice man. You can't deny they used the death of his daughter to get rid of him. And they lied about that. And Zack Snyder and his good wife Deb stayed polite and gentlemanly throughout this shit. And for me, I don't understand why we can't have a brand new universe and Zack have his own corner. I don't understand that. That's what I want in the comments today. I want you to tell me what is the problem with Zack finishing his arc, but James and Peter being able to tell a brand new story and doing their plan. We live in a generation where it's this or that. Well, I don't come from the this or that generation. I believe generally in variety, in differences, and I think we can have Snyder there and Gunn and Safran's plan there. And I think, again, it's illogical not to do this. And what happened was they've ignited the Snyder fandom by getting rid of Henry Cavill. And it's worse. I think if they didn't bring back Cavill officially after the Black Adam post-credit scene, then the uproar wouldn't be so bad. But you told everyone that Henry Cavill was back as Superman, and then you whipped it away from people. As I say, I'm generally not that gutted over the situation because I saw it happening. I do like Henry Cavill as Superman, but I'm more than happy to go in this brand new direction if it's done in a fair, good, entertaining fashion. But I don't see any problem with restoring the Snyderverse and finishing Zack's arc, as I say, in a little corner. And I don't really understand what the problem is here. I don't think it hurts anyone for us to do everything. Let's do everything. Let's just finish this situation off. Let Matt Reeves do his trilogy or whatever he's doing. Let Todd Phillips do his thing. This is what they do in the comics. Why can't we do it in live action? And, you know, again, what you're doing here, James Gunn and Peter Safran and David Zaslav, you're causing your own problem. You have ignited opposition, especially David Zaslav with the whole thing. Let's put Henry Cavill in Black Adam to try and uplift that box office, but then not use him again. Obviously, that was the plan. They clearly had no intention of bringing Cavill back. How do I know this? Because Henry Cavill didn't have a permanent contract. I assumed he would have done for him to come back, but he wasn't. He literally was paid he was paid twice for 2 cameos, one in The Flash and one in Black Adam, and that was it. There was no permanent contract because they were still undecided what to do. Zaslav was still considering, do I put DeLuca in charge? Or do I put Safran and Gunn in charge? He went with Safran and Gunn. And so now the Snyderverse fans are chomping at the bit. And if you see some of their posts, whether you like it or not, some of the things they're chomping away at are very, very clever. People complained about Jimmy Olsen being killed off, but then they're saying, well, it's okay for James Gunn to, kill off David Ayer's characters, right, from the Suicide Squad, but it's not okay for Zack Snyder to kill off Jimmy Olsen. Well, first and foremost, right, that's not the kind of Jimmy Olsen I ever wanted anyway. Jimmy Olsen is a school leaver. And if you don't implement him, you don't implement him. End of story. Zack just put in a little cameo there to try and please people, and it just made the situation worse. And, at the end of the day, each fan is different. Some fans value Jimmy Olsen. I value Jimmy Olsen. I think he's our way into the story, a bit like the companions on Doctor Who. And I think Jimmy Olsen is a lot more important than people like Zack Snyder think, but that's okay. That's a difference of opinion. And I'm sure we'll get an awesome Jimmy Olsen in James Gunn's and Peter Safran's new universe. Quite right too. Probably it will be a Jimmy Olsen of colour because we can't have a comic book accurate Jimmy Olsen because of representation. But never mind, that's the world we live in today. Instead of creating new characters who can represent minorities, we have to replace other comic book characters and use that as inclusion. That's a bit of a shame to me. But getting back to this whole Snyderverse situation, yeah, I'm down for Zack to be able to finish his stuff in a little corner, but Peter and James do their stuff centrally. This is what you do. This is what you do. You try and find a peaceful solution to situations. Zack will make money for you, right? And because it's only a little universe there, you won't need him to make $1 billion for Justice League 2, Justice League 3, Batflex, the Batfleck movie and things like that. You won't need him to make as much money because it's only a little bit. Your main bit is the one that needs to make all the money. That's the beauty of the situation. It's also good business. So you allow him to finish. The Snyder fans are off your back. You make some money. You know, you've got to understand that the Snyder fans are going to keep on coming and coming and coming. And I think as long as they're constructive and they're fair and they're not toxic, and I know some of them are toxic, but most of them are good people and are really coming up with some great ideas and some great tactics. So they're not going away. And WB, again, shot themselves in the foot. Created the biggest of own goals by saying Henry Cavill was back and then saying, oh no, by the way, he's not back. And it doesn't really matter whose fault it is. I know it's not James Gunn's fault and Peter Safran's fault, but at the end of the day, it's not about fault. As a studio, you fucked up. And now you have, your actions have brought back the Snyderverse stands in their droves and they're not going away. As I say, my Twitter timeline is full of them. If they come up with shit takes, I will quote tweet them and I will put them right. But mostly, I support them because I do want to see Snyder's story finished. But I also want James and Peter to be able to tell a brand new story to bring in new fans. And that's good and that's okay too. There's no reason we can't do everything here. But the studio has decided to ignore what a section of the fandom want. And this is a big mistake. Snyder can bring in the bacon. Not the bacon you would need in a central universe. But as I say, you've got James and Peter to bring in the big bucks in this central universe. James Gunn has great quality. But at the end of the day, you have caused a very, very dangerous situation here for yourself. Because every time you replace one of Zack's actors and you announce the casting, and if it's a bad casting, basically the Snyderverse stands can use that against you. Do you understand? And all of this could have been fucking avoided. First of all, years ago, if they just allowed Zack to finish his arc, if Jeff Johns and, Jeff Johns allowed Zack to finish what he was doing, or if Walter Hamada allowed Zack to finish what he was doing. In Walter Hamada's defense, he was going to bring Zack back, I think, I'm quite confident about this, to direct the Final Crisis movie after the Flash movie. So even Walter Hamada was smarter than these current people are, and they sacked him. Walter made enough mistakes of his own. So, as I say, we've got another leadership now that's resistant against Snyder. And it's going to... Basically, Snyder just keeps on... Snyder and his fans are driving one leadership after the other leadership out of business. And it's a problem. And now we have we have talks of mass boycotts. It's a problem. I mean, next year's movies, I think, are dead. I will go and watch them and judge them for what they are. But they're dead. And we know that now. And really, the real thing we're going to have to wait for is how James Gunn's and Peter Safran's brand new DC universe will be received. And that's going to take a couple of years, at least. I mean, when will we first see the Superman movie, for example? Could it be end of 2024, 2025? It's clear that Zaslav is putting the pressure on Gunn and Safran to come up with results as soon as possible. And I think in the next 4 to 8 weeks, we'll have more details about this Superman movie. We will probably already know in about 4 to 8 weeks who's playing Superman. That's going to be a very interesting day to see how the fandom receives these kind of castings. And I mean, Gal Gadot, if you replace her as Wonder Woman, you better come up with a great alternative. Are there any great alternatives to Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman? And this is the problem that James Gunn, Peter Safran, and David Zaslav have brought upon themselves. This has been Monday's edition of the DC Universe Daily here on Movies TV Mad with me, Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wife. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection, and I'll see you again in the next video. Until I see you again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.